I'll walk you through the midterm case study, Kill Me Now. This midterm case study is very similar to a question you're going to find in the midterm, so feel free to use this as a reference. So the first thing we do in our first step is we create a project valuation. We're basically evaluating the value a project would have in the marketplace. And the way we do that is we're looking at projections from international distribution revenues, and obviously we're assuming what we potentially could make with US distribution revenues. In our example, we are estimating, projecting that we receive 75% of our budget from international distribution revenues. This is basically just an estimate. It's an assumption. It's a guess. A healthy guess, of course, made by a bankable sales agent who knows the basis of which they arrive at this number. We have talked about before that in order for any project to be profitable, a minimum of 70 to 75% of the budget should ideally be projected to be made from international distribution rights revenues. So in this case, we're looking at 75% of a $13 million budget, which gets us to $9,750,000. The next step would be pre-sales. Pre-sales are distribution rights license agreements. It's a long word, but these are basically sales that are made before the movie is finished versus sales that you can also make after the movie is finished. They're just regular distribution rights sales that your sales agents will do. The pre-sales are made before the movie is done, so they can be used to be applied for the production financing when we go and have the bank give us a loan for these pre-sale contracts. Now, in our case, 35% of the budget are now being pre-sold. This international distribution revenues are being contractually agreed here. 35% of the budget are negotiated and concluded as pre-sales, which gets us to $4,550,000. And again, for any project to be profitable, it is suggested in a healthy and solid finance plan that at least a third, meaning 30% of the budget, can be pre-sold. This is important to prove that there is demand in the marketplace for this movie. If a movie cannot be pre-sold, it will be very hard to sell it, and it's going to be harder to make money with it. Now, whenever we do a pre-sale, or a sale for that matter, the payment terms we agree with the distributor, and the distributor can be a studio, it can be a network station, it can be a streamer in the various countries. So let's say we do a deal with a German distributor, and it might be the German version of Warner Brothers, and they buy all rights. They buy theatrical rights, television rights, streamer rights, and they basically say, we pay you $1 million, let's say, for the German rights to distribute your movie in Germany for 5 years. They would agree to payment terms that would likely suggest that 20% are paid up front and 80% are paid when the movie is delivered. So in our case, that translates to a 20% down payment in relation to the pre-sales that we have concluded. In this case, also the sales agent demands to be paid for those down payments. So we have to pay the sales agent 15% sales agency fee, 1% for distribution expenses, which could be trailers and posters and such. And then the 15% fee is paid for the work. So in this case, the sales agent gets paid when we get paid. So when we receive the 20% down payment on our pre-sales, which is 20% of $4,550,000, so it's $910,000. When we receive $910,000, we have to pay the sales agent 16% on that, which is $145,600. So what we have then actually available to us to use as a portion to finance our production cost is $764,400. Now, that is the first amount we put aside, and we know we now have to find the other finance sources to cover our budget. We're going to talk about the strike price budget in a minute. Let's stick first with the budget. The unsold rights are rights we have not sold yet. So these are distribution rights we can still sell. We can sell them when the movie is finished. In our case, we have unsold rights of $5,200,000. And how do we get there? We look at our sales estimates. We deduct the sales that were actually made, and we are left with the sales that we can still make, which are the unsold rights. $5,200,000. The distribution for the US is estimated to be 30% of our budget, and we're assuming that's $3.9 million. So if we now add up the rights revenues from the US, the rights revenues from international, we get to $13,650,000. So when we do these pre-sales and when we have these sales estimates, all we really have is paper. We don't have anything. There's no money associated to that. So how can we get money for this paper? How do we get money for pre-sale agreements that we made with the distributors? How do we get money for the rights that we still have available to sell? Maybe a bank will give us money for it. And the answer is yes, the bank does. The bank does if our sales agent is a bankable sales agent that they have worked with before, and where they know that when the sales agent gives sales estimates and does pre-sales, this is someone who actually is able to step up on the level of the estimates or projections that they have provided. So it's important that we use a bankable sales agent to represent our project. Now in our case, the bank decides that it will take the pre-sales that we have made, but will only cash flow them up to 90% of all the pre-sales that we have made. So 90% of our pre-sales would be $4,095,000. The bank also knows that we have already received 20% of our pre-sales, which was $910,000, so it deducts that. So the gross pre-sale loan, therefore, is $3,185,000. On this gross pre-sale loan, we have to pay interest, and this interest is going to be charged against that loan. So we are left with a pre-sale loan of $3,025,750. So that's the loan we get when we give the bank our pre-sale agreements with the various distributors all over the world, excluding the US, of course, because we haven't pre-sold the US. Now, we do have some rights that we can still sell when the movie is finished, and these unsold rights were valued at $5.2 million by the sales agent. The bank will look at the $5.2 million and say, well, that's great that you have $5.2 million left, but we will only ever allow collateral of 50% of that. So the maximum they would give us is $2.6 million. The maximum we would ever get from any bank is 20% of our budget. So we're checking quickly what is 20% of $13 million, and it looks like it's $2.6 million as well. So we are okay here. We're going to get a $2.6 million budget. We're going to get a $2.6 million loan, and of course we have to pay interest. In this case, it's 9%. It's higher because there isn't really something tangible against it, like a contract, as we did with our pre-sale loan. There is basically just the assumption that the sales agent will at least sell 50% of the value of rights he has available to sell at this time. So 9% are paid in interest, and the bank will also use a $50,000 loan fee. That's an origination fee that the bank will set. It's nothing we can do about it. It happens a lot with loans. So in this case, we're assuming it's $50,000. So all these costs, they will be deducted, and they leave us with a net gap loan of $2,360,000. So what we have to pay the bank back is obviously the gross loan amounts, because they include all these fees and interests. We haven't paid the bank anything yet. We do that when we get all our revenues. So we have to just remember, what do we have to pay back to the bank when revenues come in? And that would be $5,785,000. And then we have to, of course, know how much money do we actually have available to cover our budget. And that is $5,341,750. That's the bank loan, the gross bank loan minus interests and origination fees. In this case, we have a junior loan, which is also referred to as a mezzanine loan. The mezzanine lender says, I only want to pay, or I do want to give you 10% of whatever your strike price is. I will get to the strike price and what that is. It is important for you to make the distinction here. It's not 10% of the budget, it is 10% of the strike price. And the strike price was I think 12,630,000 if I'm not mistaken. So it's 1,263,000 that we're getting. The interest this lender is charging is 15%, and that is often the case by junior loans. Interest is very high because it's a much more it's a riskier loan than a gap loan. And the origination fee for this lender is $45,000. So after we deduct all those fees and interests, we are ending up with a junior loan, a mezzanine loan of $1,028,550. So as we've done with the junior lender, here too, the production incentive is 25% of the actual cost that we are spending. And the actual cash that we have to lay out, the actual costs that we have to spend, is the strike price. So the production incentive will give us 25% of that, and the lender who is going to advance this production incentive, so we don't have to wait until the end of the year and after the production to get this from our incentive state, they're going to charge us 15% up front, as well as an executive producer fee and a legal fee reimbursement. And those are fees that you will likely find in reality out there. So it's good that we're looking at this now, so you kind of know what to expect from a production incentive lender. Again, what these people do, they basically advance of what they believe you will be getting from the incentive state after spending a certain amount there. So we get $2,658,875 net after we deducted all the fees that this incentive lender is asking us to pay. And again, this is a non-recoupable loan because the incentive lender is paid back by the incentive state. We do not have to pay this lender back. The brand integration is basically a brand that we work with in the movie. Let's say we have Coca-Cola in our movie. They want to support our movie. They want to co-brand the film with us. They want to obviously put their Coca-Cola bottles in the movie, but also be involved in the storytelling and have a brand message that's aligned with our movie message. Now, the brand integration amount, the sponsorship amount, is non-recoupable because you're providing a service. You are doing something for this brand. So that's why you do not have to pay this amount back. So you're going to get $500,000 in brand integration. There is an agency fee applicable because in many cases, brand integration is managed by an advertising agency and they will charge for their work. So they're charging us 25%, which is $125,000. So the net sponsorship amount that we have available to us is $375,000. The branding company, however, will only give us 50% on closing for the production and 50% when we deliver the movie. So right now, all we have available for us to cover production costs is $187,500. For this movie, we were able to do some crowdfunding. Now, crowdfunding is basically equity financing, but in this case, it's non-recoupable equity financing. So it's money that you get that you do not have to pay back. What you do is you give merchandising items, or you allow a visit on the set, or you give them a credit. There are different things that you give away for someone who supports you through crowdfunding. In this case, however, you do not pay it back, so it's non-recoupable. The crowdfunding entity will require a profit participation of 2%, so that is our 2% backend. The crowdfunders give us $250,000, that's an amount. We have to pay an admin fee for the crowdfunding site. That will be deducted of $62,500, and then we end up with $187,500 available for us to cover our production cost. Now we get into the fun of establishing our strike price component. So here's what we have. When you look at the in-kind services, they are defined as crowdsourcing and music investment. So let's understand what crowdsourcing actually is. Crowdsourcing is someone that works on the production, let's say a DP or a wardrobe, a costume designer or a set designer, or maybe a post-production house, or maybe a visual effects house. These are entities that are connected to a line item that you have expensed in your budget. So those are people and entities that cost you money. Now, when they come to you and say, you know what, we're going to be part of crowdsourcing. For example, I'm a DP, I want to work on your movie for free, and I want to be participating in your profits. So that would be a crowdsourced in-kind service. And that's why when we look at our crowdsourcing, we have various people giving us various services that we had budgeted for free, which comes down to an amount of $250,000. Now that $250,000 is not actually handed to us because it's just a service that we don't have to pay for. And because it's a service we don't have to pay for and it's not cash that's given to us, this amount will reduce our cost. It reduces our budget. So the $13 million will now be deducted by 250. So we're ending up with 12,750,000 if I calculate this correctly right now. The music investment is a similar thing because music investment is non-recoupable because the music investor will recoup from music royalties that are paid on the movie. So they're not recouping from distribution revenues, they're recouping from music royalties. So for you, that means this is non-recoupable as it relates to your distribution revenue recoupment schedule. But they're also paying for a budgeted line item, which in this case is your music budget. That includes the music editor, it includes all the music that you're licensing, it includes all the scoring that you're making for the movie, it includes any kind of songs you're producing for the movie. Those rights in connection with the scoring and the songs you're producing are handed over to the music investor and they can now get royalty income from that. Again, this is an amount that covers a production line item. You have two options here. You can take it as an investment and you put it into the covers my production cost component, in which case it would not be deducted from your budget to get to a strike price, or you can basically deal with it as if it is not handed to you as cash and will be paying your production music budget, your music production budget. And the advantage of doing it this way, the advantage of reducing it from the budget in order to lower the budget to arrive at a strike price is that you pay a lower bond fee, because the completion bond fee is paid on the bonded strike price budget. So the lower that number is, the lower your insurance fee will be. So it is ideal for you to say, well, this is paying for a budgeted line item, so I'm just going to reduce this from my budgeted strike price, rather than saying I'm going to take the money because you are going to get an investment and I'm just going to use it for that and put it into the available for covering my production cost component. So you don't want to do that. So you're reducing the strike price. So now our $13 million budget, the $13 million budget is reduced by $370,000. So the strike price budget is $12,630,000. So your mezzanine is going to be calculated towards the strike price budget of $12,630,000, and your production incentive is going to be budgeted towards the strike price of $12,630,000. So that's where those numbers come from. And when we go to the next slide, when we talk about equity, the equity that is provided to you will only be as much as is needed to get to your strike price budget. So you're also saving in equity fees and equity costs and premium and backend by reducing the strike price using those two in-kind service components. So in order to figure out what we would need from the equity investor, we sum up all the amounts we have received towards our budget and we figure out how much is left to meet the strike price. And we really just need to meet the strike price because that's simply the cost we actually have to lay out. We have to actually pay here in order to make the movie. So it is not the full budget, it is the strike price that needs to be covered. So it's important to distinguish what our actual physical costs are at the moment of financing. This will change obviously when we later start repaying people. There might be, associated fees to in-kind services and crowdsourcing and so forth that we have to deal with in recoupment. But for now, all we need to figure out is how much money do we actually have in cash available to us? How much of that is needed to pay the costs that we actually have per our budgeted line items? And in our case, the equity that is needed to cover our cost to reach our strike price budget is $2,461,425. So now we're looking at our recoupment schedule. First, we have to establish our revenues. So we produce our movie, maybe we screened it at Sundance, and a domestic buyer, maybe Lionsgate, decided, I'm going to buy the US distribution rights from you, and I'll pay you 30% of the budget, which is $3.9 million. We're also selling our international revenues, and we are assuming that we get the international revenues as we projected them on the take price level. So we're now assuming our pre-sales are coming in at $4,550,000, which was the amount that we pre-sold. The unsold rights, again, I assumed at take level to come in at $5.2 million, which we are assuming is going to be the case here. And of course, we have to deduct money that we already received from the distributor, which was the $910,000 they paid for the pre-sale agreements. This was the advance. For the pre-sales, the 20%. So we're ending up with international distribution revenues of $8,840,000. Now, if we're adding our international distribution revenues and our US distribution revenues, we end up with total gross worldwide distribution revenues of $12,740,000. Now remember, the brand integration company still owes us money because they have to still pay the second balance that is due when the movie is finished. So now we get the second amount due on delivery of the film for brand integration, and that's $187,500. So our total gross revenues are $12,997,500. So after we have produced our movie, we have sold all the rights that were still open, our unsold rights, and we have gathered all the possible revenue sources. We arrived at the total gross revenue of $12,927,500, and it's now time to deduct our expenses. So we're paying our collection agent for the service of collecting all these revenues for us and managing them when paying back our bank, our investors, and when paying all our profit participants. So you see here the various items that we have to pay, which is the bank loan, including the interest fees in this case, our sales agent. We already paid the portion for the down payment, so we're not going to pay it here again. We're paying our junior loan and the premium that is due for this loan, and we're paying our equity and the premium that is due for the equity. And with all these expenses deducted from our total gross revenues, we will arrive at our net profits. We're now looking at our net profits after we have deducted all our expenses from our revenues, and we are dividing up the net profits as they were stated in the case study, but also in turn as they were contractually agreed by us and with us in relation to the party that's involved in our movie. So the equity would receive an industry standard 50% percentage of the amount funded in relation to the production budget. So whatever the percentage is of the budget that the equity investor has given us, we would divide that by 2, and that would be his or her profit participation. The mezzanine is receiving a small back-end participation because we have an agreement with them. The crowdfunder receives a small back-end participation. Crowdsourcing teams receive a small back-end participation, and of course the director and the cast. And the balance after all profit participations were paid is available for us, the producer, as profits.